One crying in the desert. The grass withers, the flowers fade, but the word of our God stands forever.
This is a pre-recorded archive presentation of the Watchmen on Lamb Radio.
Hear the voice of one crying in the desert.
Shalom Alaikum, and thank you for joining us on the Wall Watchman. I'm Stephen Morgan.
Hello?
Mr. Elwell.
Yes.
Mark Smith, the Wall Watchman. We've been having fun with Skype tonight. It looks like maybe you did too. I saw you on for a little while, and then we lost you.
My system decided to crash right at 7:29.
Nice. I think that was the enemy there trying to intercede there, right?
Could be.
That's right. How you doing, Doug? I'm the one that's been corresponding with you via internet, so we're definitely glad you've come on and look forward to discussing your book with you.
Great.
So, Mark, you got a copy of his book, did you not?
Yes, I did, and I've been, but I just got it this past week. And so it's been an incredible week, but I have been kind of looking at it here and there because there was no way I was going to read that before the show, but I really found some very interesting things in it. And also here, Mr. Elwell, we have a couple other people with us. Susan Hooge has also heard an interview and kind of looked at some things. Very interested in what you've got there too. So Doug knows a little bit more about it, but first of all, let's get your website address and talk to you about a couple of other things. So, what can you give us your website address?
The website address for the Planet X book is www.planet-x.info. I also have a site at mysteriousworld.com, which has some Christian-oriented and general interest material about ancient mysteries and travel and related things. And my personal site is dougelwell.com. That's DOUGELWELL.com.
Well, one of the things that I was excited about having you on was the things that obviously are on your book, but I loved your website and a little bit of a history about you. I guess that you build websites and that you also help other people to do that, or you build other people's sites, and I've been building websites for quite some time myself. So isn't that true? It's an engineering type thing.
Yeah, I've been doing it for a while. It's been a little over 14 years now. I do a lot of contract and direct hire work and working for various clients, either directly or through agencies. So I've been doing that for over 14 years and getting back into actually learning some of the more cutting-edge technologies right now.
Yeah, I find it very hard to keep up with all the new technology. It's just growing exponentially, don't you think?
Yeah, there's always something new coming up, and it's a new way of doing things, and you have to really keep up with it. Otherwise, you fall behind.
Right. I agree with that. I actually have had a website up for quite some time, going on 15 years, and using out-of-date web page making, and had to go buy new. And of course, I don't make a living at it. I've built other people's websites, but I had to, because everything was just so far behind and it was unstable. With everything happening on the internet, you have to keep up with whatever's out there to keep it stable.
Right, and security is an issue too.
Always an issue. Security around the world with everything is an issue. So that includes all the different things that you're involved in. Well, Mysterious World, I really enjoyed that site. Tell us a little bit about what we'll find there.
Mysterious World, we have a variety of articles on various subjects, ancient mysteries, religion, mythology, travel. It's mainly a travel site, but majority of the material is informative about various travel destinations or stories behind the story. About, for example, the Giants articles are the most popular ones. People love to read about the giants in the ancient world and how the fallen angels came down and intermarried with women and bred the giants, and how the giants took over the world and almost exterminated normal folks like you and me, except for the 8 who were saved in the Ark of Noah and brought over, saved from the flood that was sent specifically to destroy the giants and their works. A lot of people, you don't hear about the giants in Sunday school, you just hear about the flood part, but the reason that God sent the flood was because the giants have become so wicked. They had basically massively populated and killed off all the descendants of Seth, that is the second or the third son of Adam and Eve, because Cain had killed Abel. They had another son named Seth, and the line of Seth became the righteous line, through which Jesus was eventually born. So his plan apparently was to outbreed and fight the descendants of Seth by arming his descendants through Cain with various weapons of what we'll call technological weapons, and making them literally physically larger and stronger and smarter than the descendants of Seth, and those were the giants. They were giant men and women of great stature, renown, intelligence, and beauty, but also, on the outside they were beautiful, on the inside they were dark and wicked and irredeemable. So eventually, through their evil works, the world was corrupted. Even the very plants and animals had become apparently genetically modified to the point where God had to destroy just about everything on the earth that he had created, except for that, the original creation that he told Noah to bring with him on the ark and save and bring through to the post-flood world where he would start again.
Now, see, I find this all fascinating in that we all know the story, and we all know it in depth, and even have heard major stories around about it. But this type of thing is very fascinating to me because I'm very aware that we hold Torah, we hold the Bible as sacred, and we know that every word has its every being and means something. Yet we also know there's a whole lot behind that we don't know, right, Doug? Don't you?
Wow, yeah, you bet. I mean, he just really spoke a mouthful just then of information, coming from the Book of Genesis, and that's kind of why we wanted to have you on, Doug, but yeah, that is just a fascinating book that you have as well. But I want to ask you is the Planet X. So in your book, I guess you're kind of alluding to the fact that planet was also had come and passed through at probably a couple of different particular times throughout the history of the world, and one of them you spoke to was the birth of the Messiah. Can you give us a little bit more on that?
Yes, my theory is that Planet X is a planet in our solar system which comes and goes through the inner solar system, through the asteroid belt. That's as close as it gets, every 2,000 years or so. And when it appears, it brings change, either disastrous change, as in the case when it appeared in 2000 BC, and hurled down asteroids upon Earth, destroying the empire of Sumer, and necessitating the Abraham. Actually, Job was probably a record of the same event. And that is why Abraham was told to leave the land of the Chaldees, that is ancient Sumer, and move west to Israel, or will later become Israel. And that was the reason, because he was going to send destruction upon Sumer. And that is a historical fact that Sumer was actually destroyed around 2000 BC, actually somewhere between 1900 and 2000 BC. And 2,000 years later, by the way, in the Sumerian story, their deity Enlil, which was a planet, which they worshipped the deity, appeared in the heavens. And they described Enlil as actually literally throwing a fiery spear upon the earth, and purposely doing so in order to destroy the Sumerians, whom they theorized in their philosophy had become so wicked that their deity decided to destroy them. And at a parallel account in the book of Job, which I believe is an account of the same event, seen from the perspective of a Semite by the name of Job, probably a relative of Abraham, also a Semite. He lived probably, my theory is he lived in southwestern, what is now today southwestern Iraq. And there is actually a substantial meteor crater in southeastern Iraq, which they date to around 2000 or 3000 BC, which, whatever had been in existence at that time, would have been destroyed, because it was a substantial crater, and it would have sent huge shock waves, fire, and floods everywhere, because it was in a swampy area. And that's exactly the sort of thing that is described in the annals of the Sumerians, and also in the book of Job. You have a wind from the wilderness, a fire which burned up some of his cattle, and then after that came invaders, bandits. This is exactly what happened to the Sumerians. They were pillaged and plundered by I think it was the Elamites and related peoples, as was Job. So my theory was that Job, who was the leader of the kings of the East, or a great man of the East, one of the best and most powerful men of the East, to the east of Israel, that would have meant he was from Sumer. So I believe that theologians mischaracterized Job as being living in the land of Canaan. I believe he actually lived in the land of Sumer, as did Abraham at that time. And whereas, unlike Abraham, he was told to leave, in a situation similar to that, what happened with Lot, Job decided to stay, and as a result, he got caught in the firestorm. And Lot, of course, was saved out of the fire, just as Job. Around the same time, Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed by fire from heaven. So probably we have a situation where there are massive amounts of meteorites and asteroids falling from space, I believe disturbed from the asteroid belt, as it disturbed by Planet X as it passed through the asteroid belt on its 2,000-year orbit. And then 2,000 years later, we have this mysterious star appearing in the heavens again, heralding not destruction, but a birth of a new way of thinking, a Messiah, a new religion, or an updated.
Now, one moment, Doug. You say that now that the planet came through again at the birth of the Messiah, but there isn't any destruction with the planet at that time. And why would that not be if it had been in previous accounts?
There was one previous account where there was destruction, but I'm not sure if it happens with everyone. It could be sometimes they hit, sometimes they miss. It's not really a requirement, but I believe God withheld the destruction because he sent the sun down. He didn't want anything to be destroyed. He wanted to save people this time. I mean, God's in control of the situation. So, but this is one of the tools he uses to achieve his goals. A heavenly sign to precede his son's coming. And by the way, God and some people believe the pre-incarnate Christ form of the pre-incarnate Christ, God appeared to Abraham about that same time, 2,000 years previously. And Abraham was actually believed in the Apocrypha, I think it's the Testament of Abraham, was believed to have been, his birth was believed to have been heralded by a star also. So I believe what is encoded in this is it's revealed, but it's also hidden because it's kind of a great secret. The existence of this planet, heralding the second coming of Christ, and really every time Christ comes in whatever form he comes, every time he comes, he's preceded by this heavenly sign. And so the title of my book, Planet X, the Sign of the Son of Man and the End of the Age, Planet X, the Creation, Nativity, and Second Coming. I try to get this idea of a cyclical return where Jesus either in pre-incarnate form, when he was born, or when he returns, say if he returns in our time. These periods will be all roughly 2,000 years from each other. So my theory based on that is Planet X has an orbit of 2,000 years based on actual and potential sightings, if we are indeed living in the end times. And Jesus said in Matthew 24, I think it was 17, immediately before I return, the sign of my coming will appear in the heavens. You will see the sign of the Son of Man appear in the heavens right before I return. I believe this is a reference to Planet X reappearing in heaven, just as it appeared before his birth. It will appear before his second coming as a cyclical and reliable marker of an advent of Christ.
Wow, I have read the majority of your book, and yeah, that's kind of where you take us in the book, and you really hit on all cylinders on this, and yeah, until I come across your information, I didn't associate the Planet X that we had heard so much about, and with the coming of the Messiah, I thought maybe that it would have been. I can say my question is, what would the wormwood? Is that reference to Planet X, or is that something different?
My theory is that wormwood is actually I believe, one of the trumpet judgments.
Okay.
It is described as a kind of a fiery object. It sounds very much like a comet, actually, or an asteroid with a tail of some kind as it passes through the atmosphere. My theory was, and this gets back to the creation aspect of Planet X, is that per Zecharia Sitchin's theory, which I thought he may have hit on something there.
Sure.
Planet X may have been involved with creation somehow. And as a result, scientists believe now that the Earth was, as it is currently formed, and the Moon specifically was created after a giant impact with an impactor roughly the size of Mars. And now, I think they thought that was a planetesimal, the early form, the typical scientific thought where the solar system formed over long periods of time. And this was Earth was formed from planetesimals, and the last planetesimal struck the Earth, and as a result, the Moon was kind of kicked out of Earth's mantle and remained floating in space and circling around the Earth, and that's how the Moon was formed. My theory was that a la Sitchin was that it was actually a satellite of Planet X that struck Earth and caused the formation of the Moon. We know scientists have proven that the Moon was indeed formed from Earth's mantle because the materials it's made of are identical to Earth's mantle. Just a question of what the mechanism was, and they realized through running tests that it required an object roughly the size of Mars moving at an oblique angle, striking Earth, and ejecting a lot of Earth's mantle into space to form the Moon. Now, this, in my studies, you'll see this in the creation passages, particularly in chapter 5. I believe the creation actually refers to the Bible actually refers to this process in detail, and lots of other things. So, to get back to your original question, the wormwood is basically some of the ejecta from the ancient Earth, which may have had some primitive life forms and plant life and so forth before the giant impact, but the giant impact threw a lot of the stuff into space, where it was flash fried and powdered and frozen. So you basically have a large amount of concentrated plant material floating in space, which we found actually on various asteroids that have fallen back to Earth. It's rather unusual. They're actually carbon compounds and basic life forms that we've actually found on asteroids. So that indicates they must have originated from a planet that was able to host at least primitive life, which corroborates the Planet X, what I call the Planet X giant impact theory, where Earth was divided by an impact with one of Planet X's satellites, throwing a lot of the primitive materials, vegetable and possibly animal materials, into space, where they remain floating to this day and occasionally fall down to Earth. But what you have with wormwood is a particularly large object with a particularly large amount of vegetable material on it, super concentrated plant material of which may have possibly have hallucinogenic or carcinogenic compounds in it. And once it strikes the Earth and is reintroduced back into the hydrosphere, that is the sky the clouds, the water, the lakes, the rivers, as described in the book of Revelation. It's like an instant hallucinogen, like just add water, and it's reintroduced back into the water table, and as a result, everyone drinks the water has these drug-like hallucinations.
Wow! Did you realize that, Mark?
No, brother, not at all.
That is awesome, because it's almost like the '60s for you all over again, Mark, isn't it?
Yeah, right. Hey, we have a caller. I'd like to bring a caller in. Right?
Okay, go ahead. Who we got?
And this is Nitsa Moshe. Nitsa, are you there?
Shalom. Yes, I am.
Hey, you have a question for Doug.
Yes. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, go ahead.
Very good. Very good. Come on in.
Yes. Well, I had a question in the sense that, I've been studying this kind of stuff for a while, and I have questions. And number one was a couple of comments that maybe he can comment on them, is that I thought that perhaps the Exodus was also a time period where that or some other body was coming close to the earth, and that when Father begins to judge the earth, does your guest believe that this will happen right before his coming, after he takes us out from the nations, when he goes to judge the nations?
Yes, that's exactly right. Right before the final judgments, we'll be taken up, and he'll use Planet X to flatten the cities of the nations and wipe out the armies of the beast. It's the ultimate weapon to use against the powers and the forces of the dragon. And the force of the dragon and the beast totally destroyed by the fire that will come down when the two planets pass between each other, or pass close to each other. Though I don't actually believe that Planet X appeared at the Exodus, because it doesn't fit the 2,000-year time frame. It's not impossible.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too.
But the Exodus is actually kind of a paradigm of what will happen in the end times on a kind of a smaller scale. So studying the Exodus, you'll get an idea of what will happen in the end times.
Sure.
So what is exciting about this to me is that this is really, in my heart, my spirit, why the scriptures say, look up for your redemption draweth nigh. That we literally will see the sign of the Son of Man. And when we study scripture, and when he appears, even from Genesis, is when it's always associated with light. And so you're saying that this will come with a light also, correct?
Yes, it will appear dimly, a dim red. It will appear in the constellation, in or near the constellation of Taurus, possibly in the south. As it passes close, it will pass through the ecliptic and up above the ecliptic, and it will probably stand in the heart of Leo, the lion, when it's at its closest approach. That's my guess.
Wow,
I'm certain it'll come in Taurus. I'm sure it'll come first appear in Taurus. Go ahead.
Okay, and Taurus, do you in your book discuss about the correlations of the Hebrew concepts of Taurus and Leo?
Yes, I talk about the kind of the gospel and the stars approach to Taurus, and I actually found what I believe to be some ciphers, both in Genesis 1:1 and the book of Revelation, where Jesus actually, in Revelation, I think it's 2, or actually 1 and 2, he actually has an encoded message saying, I will reappear in the constellation of Taurus. And I can get into that if you're interested, but I believe that's what he's trying to say.
We've got about 7 minutes before we have to end the show, and then we'll come back for the second hour. But, I mean, if you got about 3 minutes until we have to take it out here at the first hour, so whatever you need to do.
Okay, this is actually very important, I think. Jesus was talking about the 7 churches of Asia Minor. Now, Asia Minor in ancient times was actually associated with the constellation of Taurus, the bull, because all the Taurus constellations were mapped over the face of the earth, and Taurus corresponded with Asia Minor. In fact, the name Taurus is still remembered in the name of the Taurus Mountains, which the dominant mountain chain of Asia Minor, which is modern-day Turkey. And the 7 churches existed in the southwestern corner of Asia Minor, in which when you map Taurus, the constellation of Taurus over Asia Minor, these 7 churches correspond with the constellation or the minor asterism of the Hyades in the face of the bull, and also with the 2 stars in the horns. Now, when Jesus says, he refers to the seven churches as seven stars. And what I believe he's trying to say is, when I return, I will return in the midst of these seven stars, which these seven churches corresponding with the seven stars in the constellation, the head of the constellation of Taurus. I believe he is saying that he is going to reappear, specifically Planet X is going to reappear in or near the constellation of Taurus. That's a cipher. I talk about that at some length in the book. It's a little complicated to get into here, but I believe that also corresponds with a cipher hidden in Genesis 1:1, where when you take the word Bereshit, the first word, and break it up and you translate the individual letters, because individual letters in Hebrew have meanings also. Bereshit is Bet is house, Resh is head, Shin is teeth or horns, Yod is hand, and Tav is cross shape, actually. So what this means is, in the house of the head of the bull, in its horns or teeth, the Shin, will appear the hand of God in the sign of the cross. That's the first word actually embeds the entire key core concept of the entire Bible, both beginning and end, is actually encoded in the word Bereshit itself, the first word of the first verse of the Bible. And Jesus reiterates this truth in Revelation 1:2, saying, as in the beginning, so in the end, I will return again, and my sign will precede me once again, just as it did in the beginning.
Oh, I'm going to tell you what, one thing leads to another. It's very, very fascinating. As a matter of fact, all of us, all the hosts here and Nitsa, we all study Hebrew to some extent. We're Messianic Jewish, and we're very familiar with a lot of this concept. But what you're bringing to us really expands on that, expounds on that, and expands it. Let's put it that way. So,
it sure does.
It's great, brother. It's really good. Let us go ahead and go out of this hour. Thank you, Nitsa, for calling in.
Great question.
Thank you.
Did you get your answers?
Yes. I just make sure he gets the site again, because he's expanding more on stuff that I've studied. So thank you.
Yeah, go ahead and give that again, Doug, if you will.
Now, as we go out. Thanks, Nitsa. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, thank you. Shalom.
Thank you.
The Planet X site is www.planet-x.info. That's INFO. And the Mysterious World site is mysteriousworld.com. You can pick up the book at Amazon, Borders, or through survivalmall.com.
Doug, what else you got, Mr. Elwell, before we open it up to our other hosts?
You want to discuss Planet X some more?
Oh, you bet, man. You just go as much as you can tell us about this Planet X, because I do find your book fascinating, and what you've shared with us thus far has been very enlightening. And just please give us some more of your information, your theory on how you think this is all going to come about, and why we were tricked a few months ago when Comet Element came through and people were hurling that to be the end. And also, if you can bring us to a point where you would, what would be the time frame that you would give out on this? I don't want you to be a date setter, but give us a little distance out in the future that you see when this is all going to unfold, as far as this planet being visible. And and obviously I subscribe to a lot of what you're saying in my own studies, and I know we're close. But how close do you think we are to this planet being seen again?
Well, the appearance of the planet appears to be referred to. I believe it's the sixth seal when it's opened. And men see the throne of God in heaven and say, to the mountains, fall down on us, so we will not be, to hide us from the face of the Lamb on his throne. I believe the throne they may be referring to might be a reference to Planet X first appearing, sometime in the middle of the tribulation. So now, hold on
one second. Doug, let me ask you this. I mean to cut you off there, but now, would you subscribe to the thought that there's already men that are aware of this planet and they're keeping this from the masses, and what is their end game in doing so? I mean, why would they not because I know Russia had over the past 5 years had made several moves and are making a lot of moves right now to really protect their population, and they're saying because of a nuclear war. But do you think it's because of that, or because they know this planet is emerging again and we'll have to deal with it?
Well, Planet X is the trump card, the key part of the end game.
Mm-hmm.
God's battle against the dragon that's been ongoing for a long time, the dragon being Satan.
Sure.
And so I do believe they know all about it, and they're very, very familiar with it, and they're very afraid of it because I suspect they fought with God for control of it. But they were thrown down and cast down and defeated and hurled down to Earth. Planet X may have been a host of ancient battles between God and Satan, and God's forces and Satan's forces. And so I believe it may be not only they know about it, it's their obsession, because they desire to take this planet for themselves, and they were not able to because God didn't want them to. And so he instead threw them down to Earth, which is a lesser planet and unclean by comparison. So yes, they are very familiar with it. Let's say, for example, in terms of timing, I couldn't tell you a specific year, but in reference to the 7 years of the tribulation, it will probably first appear sometime in the middle. Be visible to the naked eye, even though I suspect telescopes have detected it maybe decades ago. But it's been a top secret kind of thing since then. But sometime in the middle of the tribulation, they will actually be able to see it with the naked eye, and then they start saying things like, like I said, to the mountains, fall down on us and hide us from the wrath of the Lamb. Because, it's just, let's see.
Now, a lot of the pictures that are online, and some people have posted on YouTube, of seeing two suns in the south. Is this Planet X? Are we seeing that now?
No, it's not visible yet. Two suns on the south is just kind of an internet meme based on some misunderstanding of polars of how lenses work. I've looked at some of them. It's clearly just lens flares and strange atmosphere phenomenon. If there were two suns out there, we'd be burned to death. So there's no chance of that happening. And if Planet X were visible, people would be shouting from the rooftops. So no, I don't believe that has appeared yet. It'll be a big deal when it does.
Okay. Is Nemesis Planet X?
Nemesis is actually a variant theory. So scientists have tried to come up with reasons, for example, why we have comets. And one of the theories they came up with was that there was a brown dwarf star that was a companion to our sun. It circles the sun in a very long orbit, elliptical orbit, and occasionally it will, as it's coming in, it will hurl asteroids and comets, comet material from a theoretical cloud outside of our solar system called the Oort cloud, after the name of the man who theorized it, and that's where the comets came from. In my theory on Planet X, a la Sitchin's concept, the comets originated not from the outer solar system, but actually from Earth's mantle as a result of the giant impact, which threw up huge amounts of water and rock into space, where much of which became comets. Comets are basically just asteroids with water in their surface, frozen water. And in order to prove that hypothesis, prove their hypothesis, that astronomers wanted to prove that comets came from the outer solar system, they recently sent, I think it was called a Stardust probe, out to a comet called Wild 2 to take a sample from its tail and see where it originated from. And contrary to their belief that it originated in the outer solar system, they found that the materials in the comet's tail actually originated from the inner solar system, meaning that the comet originated from somewhere near Earth, or possibly, according to my theory, from the mantle of Earth. So that interestingly, in an indirect way, when comets come by, the most recent comet came by, people are actually seeing little bits of ancient Earth flying by, which God, I believe, set in heaven as reminders of the great creation battle when He defeated the dragon and created heaven and earth and all the comets.
Wow, how does the UFO sightings and what we've been seeing in that regards play into the Planet X in any way at all?
I'm not sure if they're connected to Planet X or not. It seem to be the logical step, aliens from Planet X and all that. But the end times are definitely, they're probably the fallen angels whose activity would immediately precede end times activity, because they're basically marshaling their forces for war because they were thrown down from heaven. I believe they're systematically building up the nations as a defense against the second coming, so they could oppose Christ's second coming with physical force. So the reason we have the dramatic rise of civilization and technology is because the Nephilim, fallen angels, aliens, call them what you will, have been systematically and purposefully seeding us with that technological and related information, so that we would be able to provide a credible defense against the second coming. Even though the defense will be like dust in the wind, it'll be pointless because it'll be totally destroyed. At least they'll put on a good show, and they're going to try their best, but they will fail completely.
Sure. We're going to take a break right now. Mark, what do you have for us?
What I have for you, just got a wonderful commercial here.
All right, bring it on.
He brought up that word Nephilim there, so I'd like to hear more about that when we come back. So be right back.
Instead of searching for all things Messianic on a secular search engine where anything could pop up, try a 100% Messianic research engine built and maintained by a Messianic that has lived the lifestyle for over 16 years. MessianicDirectory.info is a category directory of the Messianic, Jewish, Christian, and secular websites that will give your searches an edge you will find at no other search engine. Choose a category on the left-hand column, and it will take you right to websites that fit your search. Just one click, and you're there. MessianicDirectory.info also has a Messianic atmosphere about it that makes sure you're comfortable while you find what you need. Over 60 categories displaying over 300 pages that contain over 1,700 websites that help us all study, learn, live, and enjoy a Messianic lifestyle. MessianicDirectory.info, your Messianic info source. MessianicDirectory.info.
Blessed be Adonai, He heard my voice as I prayed for her. The Adonai is my strength and shield. In Him my heart trusted, and I have been helped. Blessed be Adonai.
And yes, that is a shameless commercial.
Well done, Mark. I really enjoy it, man. It's definitely it's good. It's good stuff, Mark.
Let me take this opportunity to say that I want to apologize to Kimberly. I had said last week that we were going to have Kimberly on as our musical guest, and then I preempted her with Joshua Waller, and I want to apologize.
Shame on you, brother.
But
shame on you.
That's no problem.
We'll have Kimberly on as our musical guest next week, and then the piano that you say that I was playing, which I really wasn't, and then the lady that sang there is Natasha Cross Reynolds, and she will be our musical guest for the following week.
All right, very good. I was thinking it was Kimberly Porch. It kind of sounds a lot like her, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, a little bit. Kimberly Porch is very good, too.
Oh, yeah, she's awesome, man.
But back to the Nephilim. I like hearing about those. Mr. Elwell, we actually had L.A. Marzulli on a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
He had some very interesting things to say about that also.
Yes, he's the expert on the subject, the Christian approach to the Nephilim. He has written a number of good books on the subject.
Hold on, Doug. You mentioned that he had his Christian approach. Where would that place you in your approach?
I'm also Christian in orientation, but I'm not explicitly only Christian. I like to take all information and grade it according to levels of credibility. Working from the core of the Bible is the absolute truth, and grading out various other information sources of lesser value.
Wow,
he does that too. So
sure.
He's written Christian books for Christian publishing companies.
That's right. Well, I just want to be clear, because I mean we're on the same page here. That's why we wanted to have you on the show, and just please just enlighten us some more with your work. It's great.
Yes, I'm also actually a very conservative Christian myself. I wanted to clarify that. But I, like Lynn, Mr. Marzulli, I'm actually pretty open-minded about alternative theories about certain things, because some of the Bible is just not very clear. And like the aliens and the fallen angels and Nephilim, in my opinion, partly influenced by his work, the angels, the fallen angels, description of the fallen angels, and their activities in the ancient times and the activities of aliens in modern times are so close to be nearly identical. They both came down from heaven. They both interacted with human females and some males too, actually, and used their sperm and egg to create hybrid people. The giants are basically not only just large people; they were also just anything that was modified from the normal man that God created, the Homo sapiens man. And what they do is they tinker with God's creation and try to create variations that are better. But they end up creating what you might call savants, people who are very good at some things but very weak in others. So you have the giants who are very exceptional in some ways, but they are morally bankrupt and heavily flawed in others.
And Doug, why do you think that the Christian churches, by and large, when they get to Genesis chapter 6, they just tend to kind of just go over it real quickly and get on past that? And what you just shared with us, for almost an hour now, they don't even give it a second of thought. They just get right through it, and they get on to something else. And why do they leave that subject alone when it seems to be so prophetic, for us this day?
Brother, Messianics do the same thing, though.
Well, I know they do, but that's my whole point, is that why do they continue to do that when it's so key that we understand what happened in Genesis 6, that we know that we're going to go through it again? What's the deal here?
Well, most congregations, even ones that purport to be conservative, are actually pretty liberal about some of the key concepts in the Bible, the giants being a classic example. Recently in a church I attend, I heard a man talk about how the giants were not literal. They were just, they were the sons of offspring of Seth and the sons of Seth and the daughters of Cain. Now, why that would create giants or men of renown is anyone's guess. The problem is it comes down to political correctness. Political correctness and liberal thinking in general has so interpenetrated the church, even at the highest levels, that it is almost impossible to get an accurate interpretation of the Bible in any real way through a church organization, because churches as organizations are subject to tax-exempt status. And as a result, if they become controversial or difficult or just say something that somebody powerful doesn't like, they could lose that status and that they could be destroyed. That's one of the reasons I decided not to go through a church approach, but independent approach, because I knew that the only way I would be able to get this information out was to do so in a way where there was no strings attached, I had no limitations and so forth.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It borderlines and actually is kind of almost on the paranormal, and they don't even want to touch that.
Yeah, it's controversial. The NIV, for example, has systematically removed all references to the dragon, for example. The key and most important antagonist to God throughout the entire Bible, and he took it out. They replaced it with the word monster or something like that. As you'll find in my book, Planet X, the Sign of the Son of Man and the End of the Age, I talk specifically in Chapter 1 and other places about the core concept of the Bible is God's conflict with the dragon in the sea. It is the core concept at the creation and the end times when the dragon reappears very prominently in the book of Revelation as God's primary antagonist. But people don't understand because Genesis doesn't overtly mention a dragon. They don't think it has anything to do with the creation. But if you have a thorough understanding of the creation passages, like Psalm 74, Job 9, and Isaiah 51, I think it's 51, where God is described as having a battle with the dragon Leviathan in the end times. Job 9 and Isaiah and Psalm 74 talk specifically about God's conflict with the dragon, his battle with it, which resulted in the creation of the earth. In fact, the dragon is mentioned numerous times throughout the book of Job in the context of creation. And it's parallel to other ancient Near Eastern texts, such as the Nume Elish, the Babylonian creation epic, which was probably the most well-known epic throughout the ancient Near East. where the creation is also described in terms of creation between God and the dragon. So the Bible was very much a product of its times. They used the same metaphors and the same symbols. And indeed, the Babylonians were related because they were also a Semitic people, but they went down, they were a different branch. But they had the same root tradition that I believe came through Noah into the post-flood world, which explains why so many different traditions of the ancient world have this description of the primary deities of their pantheons battling a dragon at the creation and using its body to create the earth, and up to and including the Bible itself. So that's one of the problems, is people are so utterly clueless about the foundational concept of the Bible that I just have to laugh at some of the things they write because they just don't know what they're talking about.
I totally agree with that completely. Well, I'm going to definitely say I've enjoyed the first part of your book that I've gotten into, but hearing more about this, I am going to dive. I'm going to delve right into it as heavy as I possibly could. So I'm very excited about knowing more. Well, listen, Susan, you got a couple of questions. Mr. Elwell, this is Susan Hooge, our Canadian co-host. And she's got a couple of questions for you, Susan.
It's good to meet you, Doug. I'm really enjoying the words that you are speaking here. It's fascinating, and much of it is coordinating with what we understand in Scripture and in truth. I do have two questions. One of them is in regards to the giants or the Nephilim of Genesis 6. In verse 4, I'm just going to bring up my Blue Letter Bible here so I can read it. It says, "There were giants on the earth in those days, and also after that." That's when the sons of God came in to the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. That indicates to me that there were giants on the earth prior to the sons of God coming in and mating with the women. Does that tie in with what you understand? I'm sorry, I have not read your book, so I'm just going blindly with this.
Yes, the giants appear to appear on a cyclical basis, roughly corollary to appearances of Planet X, so much to the point where I think that battles occur on or near Planet X where the forces of the dragon are thrown down to Earth, and they are forced to start rebreeding more soldiers. So the giants are essentially soldiers, super soldiers that they're creating specifically for their battles against God. The whole point of the giants was to create an army to oppose God. In fact, in the book of Exodus, when referring to the Amalekites, God said, "I will have war with the sons of Amalek from generation to generation." This was a repeating cycle for them, for his war against the dragon against her wicked progeny, the giants. And I do believe it's possible that the giants may have inhabited Earth prior to Adam, where they had unlawfully come down and started trying to create things of their own making. And one of the reasons that God destroyed the antediluvian world, the world before, not only before the flood, but actually before the creation of Adam and Eve, with the giant impact, was because there was what you could call a satanic civilization on Earth at that time, which he wiped out in order to make way for the creation of a new heaven and new earth, in which he would create a new man, Adam. That was the beginning of what you might call salvation history, a staged approach to defeating the dragon one piece at a time. The most recent stage, most important stage, being the crucifixion, and the next and second to the last stage being the second coming. But the giants are basically they are born, and they come on a regular basis. They were the major times spoken of in the Bible were in the world before the flood, and also during the time of Abraham, which is about 2000 BC, and also about the time of Moses, which the giants had started breeding around the time of Abraham, and had come to their peak around the time of Moses, which is why part of the reason the nation of Israel was raised up was to destroy the giants. Specifically, they were an army designed to destroy the giants in their works, so that God would not be forced to destroy the world with the flood once again, which he promised he would not do. And part of that fulfillment of that promise was the raising of an army that was specifically designed, a warrior of priest kings that would be specifically designed and well trained to defeat the giants, which is what they did for the most part. King David, the greatest of them since Moses possibly, was able to wipe out the majority of them, but there's still some of them survived.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. I have heard other people comment about Genesis 6, verse 4, and they always say, well, that's an impossibility, et cetera, but what you have just mentioned there creates a whole new angle of understanding, and it's not necessarily something that we can grab hold of as a truth or whatnot, but it provides a new angle to look at the rest of Scripture. I do have one more question. Is that possible, Mark, for me to ask one more question?
See, sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
What we would like to know, I know there's a group of us that also would like to know this, is in regards to Planet X itself, the physical body of it. I have an article here that I've got up on my laptop right now. It's by an organization called universetoday.com, and an astrophysicist has his own blog spot here. His name is Ian O'Neill, and he is talking about Planet X and saying that at this point in time there is no evidence of Planet X, and he's citing the fact that if you were to take a planet the size of Mars and project it further out past Pluto, and then have that rotate around the sun, they do their mathematical calculations, etc., and they come out that that this Mars-massed planet would rotate around the Earth at 62 AU. Now Pluto is at 39 AU. And apparently from what they know, their equipment can reach as far out as around 300 AU from, actually it's 320 AU from the sun, and there's still nothing there. Could that indicate that this Planet X, if it does truly exist, that it has a very fast orbit?
The reason they can't see it, or at least not easily, is because Planet X is what you call a black body. It's like comets, which are actually very dark, darker than coal. It actually is covered or obscured by clouds of thick darkness. It's actually described, the throne of God is actually described in the Psalms several times as being obscured by clouds and thick darkness. And I believe that's what they were talking about. When Planet X destroyed the Earth, it threw up a large amount of organic and other materials into space, much of which still circulates around the planet. Planet X, that is. As a result, it's nearly black in color, blacker than coal, like many comets, which are actually very dark in color. We only see them because of the comet tail, otherwise they're invisible to the naked eye. Planet X is the same. It will not become visible until it approaches close enough for the water in its atmosphere to start sublimating like that of a comet. And this is why in the ancient texts you have Nibiru or Marduk, or whatever you want to call it, always appearing with these comet-like wings and tail. It's because it's essentially a giant comet in appearance, which only shows up, becomes visible to the naked eye when it's within, I would say, probably the orbit of Jupiter or closer. Therefore, otherwise it's stalking around in its orbit like a thief in the night, waiting for its time to come again every 2,000 years.
Again, fascinating. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan. Appreciate it. Let me do a quick little break here and thank Nazarene Radio Network for sponsoring us. And we do appreciate them letting us do this. If I can get that to play. Maybe.
You want me to sing it, Mark?
Yeah, why don't you do that? Because it's not apparently doing anything.
Can you hum a few bars?
Oh, okay. We want to thank the Nazarene Radio Network. That's at Nazarene
Come on, Mark.
.net.
There you go.
I had it ready otherwise. So we do want to thank them. They have been very good with helping us with this. So we appreciate it. How about this? This will work, huh?
The Nazarene Radio Network. Excitingly new, yet they have some of the most seasoned, established teachers within the Messianic lifestyle. Go to NazareneSpace.com to hear well-known teachers, lecturers, and authors such as Dr. James Trim, Monty Juta, Rico Cortez, Brad Scott, and Andre Revenel. The list just goes on and on. Also, you'll hear first-class live broadcasts and archives of the top Messianic shows like Sticks and Stones, The Wall Watchmen, Come Out of Her, My People, and Two Witness Netzarene. So if you're interested in great teachings or just want to hear broadcasts about the lifestyles we live, go to Nazarene Radio Network, found at NazareneSpace.com or our sister site at NazareneMedia.net. May the Lord richly bless you and keep you.
And the words of hell will turn and sing for the name of Yeshua, Lord.
Mr. Stephen Fairley, meet Doug Elwell. You got a couple of questions for him, brother?
Yes. How's it going?
Good.
I just mainly have one question. You've kind of touched on the sources that you've used in your research. I'm talking more historically here. I wondered if you could just expand upon that just a little bit. Maybe tell us what sources you use, obviously other than the Bible, and where we might be able to go and access those. Are those easily available online, for instance?
Regarding Planet X specifically, or the concept of the Planet X?
Well, I'm talking more about the historical aspect of it regarding the giants and the Nephilim and so on.
For the giants and Nephilim, I recommend you go to my series of articles on the giants at www.mysteriousworld.com. Click on the archives link at the top, and scroll down, there'll be an article on the giants. There's 4 on that page there. You can also just search for Giants in the Earth in Google. You'll probably be near the top of the return. And I recommend starting with the Giants in the Earth Part 1. They're all linked together. Start from the beginning, and there's all kinds of links from there to various online sources. As far as written sources, I would recommend Steve Quayle's book on the Giants is good. There's also a book by a man named Charles DeLoach, DeLoach, which is very good, Giant material. And those are the 2 primary sources. There's also a number of different sources at the bottom of each of the articles on giants regarding specific information about the giants, both in myth and in history, because giants were part of our living history. Caesar, I think it was one of the Caesars' conquest. There was one called his letters were published under the name Caesar's Conquest of Gaul, where he described the giants as being 7-8 feet tall and gigantic in stature.
Yes,
so giants are actually part of our real history.
Yeah, I was also, when you were talking about giants, it also made me think of the Titans, in Greek mythology. I wondered if that had, I suppose, a grain of truth in it.
They are the same. They're just basically a different take on the same phenomenon with the gods, quote unquote, probably fallen angels, coming down and mating with human women and bearing giants, or in this case, titans. They may have been a different class or a different breed of giant, but they're all basically the same. They're demigods, that is to say, modified humans who have been added the seed of higher beings somehow, and made to be larger, stronger, smarter, just generally better in every way, except for their serious deficit in morality.
That's a good way to say it, for sure. Thanks, Mr. Fairley. How are you? Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, man. Kimberly Rogers, you got a question for him?
Yes, I do. Earlier, somebody asked about when will we be able to see Planet X, and as far as I could tell, the answer was that we'll see it about halfway through the last 7-year period, just before the Great Tribulation. But if he's got so much information, Mr. Elwell, if you've got so much information, why are we not seeing it now, or why will we not see it very soon in the future? Do you know where this planet is right now?
I don't know anything. I have theories about it. My theory is that it'll appear midway through the tribulation period. That is 3.5 years into the tribulation, halfway through, not before it. And also, my theory is based on what I believe to be some codes, ciphers, in Genesis 1:1 and also Revelation chapters 1 and 2, that it will appear somewhere in or near the head of the constellation of Taurus, the bull.
Right.
That's my theory. I couldn't tell you for sure, but if it does exist and it does appear, I believe it will appear in or near the constellation of Taurus.
Well, let me ask this, Kimberly. With that being said, I mean, when everything going on in our world today that we see with nation, obviously Bible prophecy is being fulfilled right now. I mean, can you give us anywhere? Do you think we're close? I mean, are we within the next 5 years of seeing this thing, or 10 years? And can you just give us a little ballpark figure here? Because all things on the earth would lead me to believe that we're within the people's lifetime on this show. Within seeing the coming of this planet and the coming of our King. So, what would you say to that, Doug? I mean, can you give us somewhere close there?
The only date I've heard of any relevance would be the 2012 date, but I really have no idea if that's it or not. It does have a lot of emphasis. Tom Horn and others have done research on 2012 from the Christian perspective and noted that there are other references to 2012. And, for example, the Zohar, the Kabbalistic work of the Jews, I believe mentions 2012 as some sort of end times prominence, according to his read of it. And there's some other things he mentions in some of his writings. He has some pretty good books on the subject and related issues. If I were to say a date, it would probably be 2012. And if 2012 were the beginning of the tribulation, it would probably appear sometime in 2015 or 2016 to the naked eye.
Interesting. Kimberly, you had a follow-up, what you were saying there?
Well, yes, it was already answered, but that his last comment, Mr. Elwell, your last comment makes me think that perhaps the secular calendars, the Mayan calendars and so forth, may be more correct than what we're thinking. Is that your take on it?
I really have no idea. I haven't studied the Mayan calendar much. I've just heard so much about it that people seem to think it's the end date. So, for lack of a different one, that's as good as any. It could be 2020 or 20,000 years from now. We just don't know.
And Mark Biltz did a study on the blood moons that occur in, I believe, 2015 or somewhere around there. So that may be a good time for us to start looking for it, too.
When the sun turns to ash cloth and the moon turns to blood, there'll be a series of lunar eclipses around 2015. Is that what you were saying?
Yes. There's a kind of a 18-month bracketed area where you have lunar eclipses and solar eclipses happening, and I think it's like 2014 to 2015. 2014 at Passover and 2015 at Sukkot, sometime in that area, if I'm remembering. It's been a couple of years since I've listened to Mark's teaching, but somewhere in that time period, we may hit the middle of the last 7-year period, which would be the time when we would see Planet X.
It's possible that it would be presaged by other heavenly signs. That would make sense. I believe Jesus said, and also Isaiah, the sun will turn to sackcloth and the moon will turn to blood. That could indicate that there is a solar and lunar eclipse in close succession immediately before the second coming. Is an indicator of a time, actually. So if one could determine what he was talking about specifically, he could actually determine not the exact date, but maybe within a couple of years when he actually returns.
Well, what did you think about the fulfillment of the Revelation scripture that we had on September 29th, where it talks about the woman, with the moon and giving birth and the dragon coming after her, and we saw that fulfilled on the 29th in the constellations.
Was there a moon passing through Virgo or something? I didn't catch that.
Yes, there was. I'm trying to remember what chapter that's in Revelation. I wrote about it tonight. Well, yes, Revelation 12.
The moon was at the moon was at her feet.
Yes,
correct?
the moon moved down from her shoulder.
Sure. That's right.
Down to below her feet, and Venus moved into the womb.
That's right.
And came out, and then the dragon. What's the Greek name for the dragon? Now I forget.
Draco.
Thank you. Came after the planet Venus had been born. Venus is the bright and shining star, so that's represents Yeshua. Anyway, this happened on September 29th, and it only happens once every. Well, there are estimates anywhere from 2,000 years to upwards. So it's not very common to happen.
That's interesting. I don't follow that sort of thing because it's similar to astrology, but who knows what's actually true about that. It might be a thing, something to it, I don't know. Regarding Jesus as the bright morning star equated to Venus, I actually think that he was actually referring to Planet X as the sign that preceded his first coming, which will also precede his second coming. By saying a bright morning star, he says that in Revelation 2. He's saying the same star which preceded my birth will precede my second coming as well, because everyone would have known the well-known story of the Bethlehem star, and how it preceded his birth. It was at the second chapter of the New Testament. Even though it may not have been written at the time Revelation was written, would have been a well-known story. So I believe he's actually referring to the same star which preceded his coming. Also, Venus being worshipped by the ancients as fertility goddess would have been inappropriate to associate with Jesus. So I tend not to think in those terms.
That's good. That's very interesting. Very, very interesting. Well, thanks, Kimberly. Appreciate it. Good questions. I love the fact that you stay up on this. Quite honestly, I think it's all going to happen on May 32nd of 2012.
I'll tell you, on December 22nd, everybody's going to wake up and they're still going to be here, and everything's still going to be going on just as it is now.
Yeah, that's you got a point there. You really do. All right. Well, we're counting down the minutes here. We've got about 7 minutes left, and Mr. Elwell, will you please give us your website addresses again, and let us thank you for being on.
Sure, no problem. The name of the book is Planet X, the Sign of the Son of Man and the End of the Age. You can read more about it at planetx.info. That's planet-x.info. You can order it at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, SurvivorMall.com. Or if you wouldn't mind, order it through a local bookstore or a Christian bookstore, so they'll have it on their shelves for others to see, because they usually order an extra copy when people special order it. Other websites, MysteriousWorld.com. My personal website is DougAlwell.com. That's for my business. And if you have any questions about Planet X, you can send me an email, publisher@MysteriousWorld.com. I'll be happy to help you.
Well, this will be played on a couple of different networks, and so I'm really hoping that you do get some good book orders. It's been very, very, very interesting, and we're absolutely thrilled to have you on. And I love the stuff. It's great. I'm going to dive into the book now and and get more out of it. I'm not so sure that it wasn't better for me to hear this first and then get into the book. So we're definitely not Dr. Stan Monteith's radio show. We're pretty laid back here, and we enjoy the nonchalantness of this. And I hope you were comfortable for the interview. And so, once again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Wheeler.
Yes, sir.
Last word.
Yeah, great job. Doug, thanks for coming on and sharing some of your information with us with your book. And Godspeed to you, my friend, and keep up the good work. So thanks a lot for coming on.
No problem.
All right. God bless, brother.
All right, good night.
Touch that dial. Do not click off that page. We are Lamb Radio.
Hear the voice of one crying in the desert. The grass withers, the flowers fade. The word of our God stands forever.
This is a pre-recorded archive presentation of the Wall Watchmen on Lamb Radio.
Hear the voice of one crying in the desert. The grass withers, the flowers fade, but the word of our God stands forever. So surrender.
Shalom Aleichem, and thank you for joining us on the Wall Watchman. I'm Stephen Morgan.
Sometime in the future, Mark, we're going to have a show where I interview you.
Barry.
Hi.
Hey, Barry. Mark Smith here with the Wall Watchman. How are you this evening, my friend?
Not too bad.
Not too bad? Well, I know you just finished your show probably about an hour or so ago.
No, a lot less. Half an hour, but you're right about that.
Okay. Well, I'm here with my co-host, Doug Wheeler. Barry, Doug, Barry.
How you doing,
Barry?
Hey,
not
Barry,
too bad.
From time to time, I'm going to do my Dr. Stan Monteith impression for you, so just don't get confused and think you're on Radio Liberty, okay?
Oh, I do more than Dr. Stan, but I'm very proud that he has me on the show a lot.
Oh, no. What I mean by that is I love Dr. Stan. That's when I first come across your information and stuff.
Same here.
I like him, and sometimes I find him kind of funny, whether he thinks he's funny or not. But I really enjoy him a lot, and that's how we're privy to you and the things you've been doing too. So, but thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think I've listened to practically everything on your website and gone to listen to whatever Dr. Monteith has had and the whole thing, and we enjoy what you've got to say. And first of all, let me tell you, brother, we are very in tune to things that are going on in Israel. We believe that we need to watch Israel to be able to know what the future is. And we know
looks
you
pretty
are
bleak.
the same way. Looking pretty bleak.
Isn't looking good.
Yeah, I know. Listen, we've got about another 20 minutes in this first hour, and then we'll go into the second hour. But first of all, any news that you've got that you can share with what is going on in Israel and what you're seeing over there right now?
Well, the news is kind of boring. It's Netanyahu blocking important pieces of legislation. Well, the usual. The government is not. There's no even pretense that it's representing the people who put it in power. There's no even pretense that the police are protecting. Certainly, the Jews of Judea and Samaria. There's no protection whatsoever. I mean, it's gone. I mean, these are the classic Jewish police of Europe in the 40s. They're working against the Jews. We know all this. Unfortunately, the problem is the Jews of Judea and Samaria are they're amongst the most patriotic citizens, and they can see, but they can't recognize that the government of Israel is entirely devoted to their destruction. And, it's the usual stuff of deception and deceit and a very, very corrupt mafia government that's just opposing the reality of the people who put them in power.
Well, that's kind of the same thing we have here in America, wouldn't you say? I mean, it's kind of no different.
Yes, there are comparisons.
Sure.
There are distinctions, but yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes we don't necessarily in tune ourselves with the government here. As a matter of fact, the very first show we did, we had Rabbi Moshe Goldsmith, who's the mayor of Itamar, Shomron, Israel there, and he was talking about the Jewish state, and we kind of confronted him on that, and Doug did there. And
Itamar will be off the face of the map. I know Itamar. I spoke there, and I've returned there a few times. There'll be no more Itamar. It's on the government's block of communities that will be wiped off the map.
What do you mean by that? Expound on that.
Removed. The people removed forcibly from their houses, given over to the Palestinians. What could be clearer?
Because of the settlements.
Pardon me?
Because of taking the settlements out.
Well, Itamar is a very obscure and difficult to protect settlement on top of a narrow hill, and there have been terrible incidents there, but it's too much trouble to maintain it. It requires too much security. So it's one of the first that it's on the map. It's going to be taken out. Look, what the government is planning is entirely different from what the people of Itamar or Judea and Samaria think they're planning. They're planning to wipe out the West Bank as it exists, one way or another. But Itamar is not in a block of settlements. It's outside the main blocks. So it will be one of the first to go. They've already knocked out the 4 settlements of northern Samaria. They're gone. That's now the PLO. Next. Pardon me?
Yeah. No, really. I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm surprised. I guess I didn't know that.
What surprise? They did it in 2005. They wiped out northern Samaria.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
So what do the people in Itamar think is going to happen in their favor? I mean, are they...
None.
I'm sorry?
None. They don't see anything going in their favor.
Okay. So they
expect that they will be removed. They don't say it aloud, and they think that they'll pray and that God won't abandon them, and a Messiah will come, and somehow they'll survive. Those a little more rational understand that they're finished.
Wow. And when do you see this coming to pass? I mean,
well, whenever there's an available opportunity. Right now, the Jews of Judea and Samaria are under really very thin protection from their police and army. All the routes, all the roadblocks, all the things that used to protect them, 90% are gone. And they're all by themselves. They go to their homes down these skinny little roads with a couple of soldiers from one end to the other protecting their lives, and they don't always survive. To get to Itamar, you've got to climb this hill. The hill is perfect for ambushes. A tremendous percentage of their population has been ambushed and killed. This is the way they live.
Yeah. Well, you're there. They're in the news much more than most other places are. Different things. When I talked to Moshe today, they just had another couple of guys that came up to their fence in the same place as the people that came through and killed the Fogel family just a couple of weeks ago.
Right. Wow. Look, the army is permitting them. If they won't go peacefully, a bunch of them are going to have to die, and then they'll go peacefully. There's no protection for the lives of the Jews in Itamar right now, or the outlying settlements. That's what they call them. They got rid of Gaza. This was in 2005, 2005, the summer, August, and they still have no compensation. They were thrown out of their houses. They still have to pay their mortgages. I wrote this book. It was called Bye Bye Gaza, and later on I'll tell you how to get it. But I recorded. I went to Gaza week after week. I spoke there. I sold books there. I did whatever I could to wake them up. They had this belief that somehow or another sanity will return. And then one night the Israeli army gathered. I was there, 2-3 days before. I saw army trucks and army jeeps riding freely through Gush Katif, through Jewish Gaza. I said, are you people nuts? You got to get rid of them. You got to block them. You can't let them into your communities. You got to put up barricades. Well, they didn't, and they were removed and given no compensation. Their families were thoroughly disrupted. Their kids, statistics say like 50% are on drugs. Religious girls are, there has been a wave of non-religious behavior, putting it mildly. They completely disrupted the community. Yeah. And they have to pay their mortgages back. This was the big one with me. Look, the book, I went there and I described the last days of Gaza and the delusions of the people. Look, there was a lot of psychological warfare. They had the kids, instead of openly rebelling, they had them holding hands. They would hold hands from Gaza to Jerusalem. They would hug soldiers and kiss them. Well, not kiss, that's not allowed, but dance. You can dance with soldiers. They had them completely hippified. Now, again, when they were thrown out of Gaza, the banks weren't responsible. The government threw them out. They had to pay for the rubble that their homes became. They had to pay the mortgages for 20 years.
Wow. We don't think about those things here at all.
What does that
all
mean?
We know is the news we hear.
That was in the news.
I mean, the news from then. I'm just telling you, even now, though we only hear what the news wants us to hear, and I mean we don't even with Itamar, you just hear brief little bits and pieces unless you actually know somebody there, and they're hopeful, but like you say, being hopeful is one thing. I think they probably know more than what they even let on.
In the back of their minds, the front of their minds is total faith, and nothing can happen to us. And they go to synagogue and pray, and they expect God to save their community. They're in for a mighty big disappointment.
Well, I mean, what would you say that is the end game that the Israeli government is looking to accomplish here?
The end game is the destruction of Israel.
Well, no, I understand that, but what I'm asking is, though, is what in turn is the leadership in the Israeli government going to get from the destruction of Israel? I mean, themselves being destroyed? I mean, what?
They've been placed in power. They've allied themselves with outside forces who are really don't like Jews. The worst of the lot, because he'd had so much influence over the years, is the murderer of Yitzhak Rabin, Ariel Sharon, that's Shimon Peres. And I'm not just throwing that out. I've written books. I've got the evidence. Yeah. The evidence is indisputable. The president of Israel is a serial murderer. And the Israeli people just kind of take it. It's they feel powerless. This generation is not the Israelis of old, far from it. They want to go, they want to go bar hopping and pubbing, and
True.
This is what they do, and that's the Israelis of today. They could care less if their president is a murderer. It doesn't bother them.
Well, therein lies the problem. I mean, it's a nation riddled in sin, so I mean the judgment will befall them sooner or later.
No, the leadership that's not true. The leadership is a mafia. It's tremendously riddled in sin. The population has been played with, their minds have been played with, they've been turned into something else, and as dumb as they are, basically they're innocent. It's their leadership that is not innocent and know what the game is.
Yeah, but I think we're all accountable for our own understanding.
No, we're not. We're not even remotely accountable. Yeah, not even remotely. No, that's a ridiculous statement. What you've got is the people who've been manipulated. You've got the Jews of Gaza from Gush Katif. The youth were manipulated. To say they're responsible, an idiot isn't responsible if he's gone through, if you're a young kid, your mind isn't developed, you get your leaders, and you don't know that your leaders have been appointed by the government, and they're snitches, and, you view them as people on your side. And you've got, I forgot his name. I blank myself out. The rabbi of Judea and Samaria was a complete fraud working for the government. What was his name? It doesn't matter. You have people like names that you don't know, Itamar Ben Gvir. You have your leaders are working for the government. I could kill myself. My memory is just going down the drain. This rabbi, I worked for him on a separate case, on the Pollard case, and it turns out he was using me, but I could use the money. He wanted to know, he wanted to make sure that Pollard stayed in prison. And I provided him with the evidence why he's in prison. When it comes down to the Jews of Judea and Samaria are dependent and believe that these phony, baloney, government-appointed rabbis who have been knocking off their own rabbis and making sure they're caught in ambushes, amongst other ways, are all from the government. and you've got a young kid who's 17 years old, and the rabbi tells this 17-year-old girl that you hug soldiers, that no Jewish soldier would ever evict other Jews, and you fill them with this baloney, well, you do the trick. You just surrender, you let the troops come in, you let them throw you out of your house, and I'm still kicking myself. What's wrong with me? What's the name of the rabbi? Shapira? Was that his name? I'm blanking myself. He was so damaging. He was so damaging, and he's still at work today.
Well, I think what Doug was saying is that the government is going to be held accountable to God for
by
what
who?
they're doing.
By who?
God. By God.
Oh, forget God. Israel has lost most of its territory. The Sinai is gone. Northern Samaria is gone. All you have left, Gaza is gone. There hasn't been one thing that a prayer has been answered. Not a one.
What's the point?
Rise up.
What's the point?
Yeah, really, what's the point?
There's no hope, it sounds like, right, Mary?
Well, if you allow your government to murder off its, Rabin Sharon, oh Lord, Mata Gur, Rechavam Ze'evi, the list is so long. If you dare to get influential and have an opposition voice, you don't live long in Israel.
Well, you got a point there. Okay, listen, let me first apologize to you. We did not talk about your website when we first come in, the Barry Kamish website.
I'll plug myself.
What it is, right?
I'll plug myself now, get it over with. Look, to get my book... What?
No, go ahead.
I'm going to plug myself. Get it over with once and for all. My books are available at www.lulu.com, lulu.com. You'll see a search box. Type in my name, Chamish. That's how you spell Chamish. And my website is barrychamish.com. There. The plug is over.
Okay. That's good. It's all right. Well, I enjoyed the name of the other website that you have. The very you say Camish? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. I had heard it different somewhere else, and so but the very Camish website .com. I thought
no. barrychamish.com. That's it.
Chamish.
Right.
Okay, very good. Yeah, that's where I've gone and listened to your lectures and different things. So very interesting. Well, one of the things that I always thought was real interesting in what I had heard you talk about was the CFR or the Council on Foreign Relations. Give us your take on that and the different things. How do they tie to the one world government, basically? Are they kind of putting something like that together, or do I misunderstand who they are?
You have to understand, this is an organization. It's in New York. I'm not going to give you the whole story. It's a long one. You get my books, and I'll explain how Israel is tied into it. But Benjamin Netanyahu, well, first of all, the CFR, if you want to get ahead in American politics, you'd better belong to the Council on Foreign Relations. You look up the cabinet ministers that are from the CFR, not just this cabinet. You look it up on the Internet. Just do American cabinet CFR and work that out. But the real problem in Israel is that Netanyahu just came from the CFR. Now, I'm going to do this short version.
Sure.
Again, the long version we don't have the time for, but Netanyahu was a nothing in 1974. He was in America learning, I I think it was architecture in Massachusetts. He was found. He was transformed. In 1977, now look, he was given a job in America, tremendous salary, $150,000. We won't go through who gave it. It was CFR. I'm not going to do it. The point is he returned to Israel and sold furniture. From $150,000, he was making $15,000 in a good year. This was in 77, and within months, Netanyahu organized an anti-terror conference on nothing. I mean, this guy's a nothing. Who shows up? George Bush, Richard Pearl, George Shultz, the whole CFR gang makes his conference noteworthy. Believe me, I should give a lecture and these guys show up. All right? They don't show up by accident. Well, he goes back, conference ends, he goes back to selling, well, sofas and stools and whatever else a furniture salesman sells. And suddenly in 1982, Moshe Adens, who is again on the CFR's International Advisory Committee, he is the ambassador to Washington. He appoints Netanyahu as his deputy ambassador, the second highest diplomatic position in the books, the deputy to the Washington embassy. Well, a lot of people in Israel who had waited years, bureaucrats who had worked in the foreign ministry and had hoped their time had come, were really ticked off that a furniture salesman got the post. It was kind of a little scandal. Moshe Ahrens explained that George Shultz and George Bush were very impressed by his conference, and so he becomes. That's how you manipulate people into power. Remember, this guy's just a schnook, but he had backing. So what do you know? He's now deputy ambassador. That leads to he becomes the ambassador to the UN, and little by little he is intruded into the Israeli body politic. And in 1992, I've got the actual record. I've sent it out. It's in my books again. In 1992, Netanyahu, who was an American citizen, to be in the CFR, you have to be American. Netanyahu took out American citizenship. He became a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. Look, to say that it matters not who you vote for in Israel is an understatement. You vote right, you get left. You vote left, you get right. They're all deeply, deeply controlled. The money goes into the people. Well, the CFR is only one example. The business with Paris. And again, people don't understand this until I proved it. Again, there's nothing extenuating or embellished about my writing. It's raw facts, a lot of it. Shimon Peres, the president of Israel, has been so tied up with the Vatican, there are not words to describe that he's the Vatican's agent in Israel. You've got the president, Vatican, you've got the prime minister, CFR. The Israeli leadership is entirely controlled by the outsiders who have no love for Judaism whatsoever.
Sounds like it. Definitely sounds like it. Well, listen, really kind of one last question. I think, Doug, you got anything you're interested in there besides my one last question?
Right now, it just seems that, for what you're sharing with us is that the Israeli government is as corrupted as the country that we live in currently today, right?
What country you live in? What are you talking about? The Israeli government was put in power by the Vatican or the CFR from New York. It's not like the Israeli government decided on its own to be representatives of, well, today it's called the peace movement. They foisted Oslo on Israel, and since then, every Israeli prime minister has been backing Oslo and the PLO. This is the way not Israelis want it. This is the way that outsiders determined to cut down Israel into nothingness want it.
Yeah. Sounds like it to me. The other thing that I had never heard before that I think really threw me off was when you had said that Sharon and others had talked of no Israeli borders. In other words, that's what they were headed towards. I just...
what does that mean? I'm lost here. What no Israeli borders? Sharon... Well, let's just put it this way. He was the prime minister who got rid of Gaza and northern Samaria. And the corruption behind that, again, I have a book called Bye Bye Gaza where I go into that. What we're talking about is the Israeli people thought he was a right-wing militaristic leader they could trust, and they got the Gaza pull-out.
Okay. Interesting. I just thought it
and by the way, he didn't die naturally. Again, that's in my... You know what? That's in Bye Bye Gaza as well. Sharon's story, it's a good story. I don't think we have time, but Sharon was knocked off in a plot with Peres and Ehud Olmert. What was it? 3 hours before, he had a sudden stroke that disabled him forever. He signed an agreement with Olmert that he would take over the government. Well, he had a minor visit to the hospital the next day. Olmert took over the government. Peres and, well, let's just say that Olmert and Peres knocked off Sharon.
Well, one thing leads to another, and that's for sure. I tell you what, Barry, we'll tell you that we believe that God is in control, and that I think no matter what they've got going there in the government, I think it's God's land, and it is God's support that we have to depend on.
This is not God's Israel. This was never intended to be God's Israel.
Started with, that's for sure. Yeah,
this is not God's Israel. You're making a mistake here. Look, I'm not going to go through the horrible history of what happened to the Jews in the 20th century. But to get the Israel we've got today, there were a lot of bodies attached. I have a book again. I'm not plugging myself, it's a fact. It's called Shabtai Tzvi. It's called Shabtai Tzvi, Labor, Zionism, and Israel. The founders of Israel had such a disgust of the Jewish people and the Jewish religion. There are no words to describe the deal, the transfer agreement with the Nazis, that we will be the only Jewish organization in Nazi Israel. We will get the Jews we like. We will send them to Palestine. Then do whatever you want with them. What you've got is a history that I would assume your listeners have no knowledge of. This may not be God's Israel.
Well, you know what? Let me go ahead. Hold on, Mark.
Go ahead, bro.
I could probably subscribe to that thinking that the current government over there is not. I can go along with that, no doubt about that. I mean, it's obviously not the God that. It's obviously not the Israel that God had warned it to be. I agree with that, no doubt.
I do too. I will agree along those lines.
These are anti-Semitic Jews.
True.
If you know anything about Shabtai Tzvi, there was a false Messiah in the 17th century named Shabtai Tzvi. He overtakes it. Look, this is not a simple thing to describe. You've got a Messiah who is anti-Jewish. According to him, the Torah was right in the opposite sense. In other words, everything in the Torah is wrong. Do not kill becomes do kill. Do not steal becomes... What's going on there?
Yeah, Doug, it's your speakers are come up again.
All right, my friend, don't be.
It's okay. It's got an echo there. Go ahead, brother. We got it.
If you don't understand that the labor Zionists, the founders of Israel, the Ben Gurions, the Weizmanns, the Golda Meirs, they were rotten to the core. They were deeply anti-Jewish. If you don't understand that this Israel was set up to be an anti-Jewish state, you don't understand the mess they're in today.
Yeah. I'm sure I don't understand, but that's what I do want to understand because it sure does.
Go to lulu.com, www.lulu.com. Spell my name in the search box, CHAMISH, and look at the books.
I totally agree. Barry, thank you so much for being on with us. We do appreciate it. It's always great to get another perspective of what's going on.
Right. All right. I'll speak to you one of these days.
All right. Thanks a million. You have a great evening, brother.
You too. Night all. Bye.
Night.
Anybody out there don't have a cell phone? I mean, every one of us have cell phones and pretty. Ooh, look at that! It even shows. Ooh, shows through, don't it? You like the new background? We'll talk about that later. Everybody's got a cell phone, and I mean, what is it? Probably 90% of everybody, especially in the States, has a has a smartphone. Has one of them real thin things there with that. If I put that over there, then we're just reflecting everything. Cell phones. Hi, my name is Mark David Smith, and you're watching The Compass of Graham. On our cell phones, whether this is an iPhone, I can't. Oh, look at that, my baby up there. With this new background, it's kind of hard to do stuff like this, but we all know what apps are, APP apostrophe S's. We all know what an app is. So we have different apps, and usually, I think all phones, whether Androids and I think that's an interesting name for a phone. Every time I hear the word Android, that's a robot to me. Data was an android on Star Trek, and so you have a phone. I'm carrying around a robot in my pocket, and anyway, I like the iPhones. Had Android for a while, and it was okay, just a little cheesy to me, and I like the professionalness. I don't like Macs when it comes to computers. I just don't care for them, but I'm not using. My first computer was actually a Macintosh and a Mac, and then I went to PC and never went back. Okay, so we have apps on our phone, and now basically that's what they're calling things on your computer, because as the millennials, who are the ones who create the technology of today, pretty basically. I'm 65. As much as I dislike millennials, I don't, I mean, they're okay. My daughter's a millennial. I love her. Hey, she's great. But, as they create the technology of today, you don't have a say. Yeah, I mean, on your computer anymore, unless you pay, extra money to get the professional version of like Windows 10. It's going to update when it's going to update. You really don't have a whole lot to say about it, that type of thing. But when it comes down to a phone, same thing. It's going to update when it's going to update. Not a whole lot you can do. Every time my phone or computer updates, it literally it changes things. Sometimes a little bit, sometimes a lot. Sometimes I get on my computer, it's updated. Practically the whole thing is defunct. Anyway, so let me morph what I'm talking about here into another subject here of what we got going. What if you had an app on your phone that told you when you were going to die? Now, we know come on, we're religious people. I mean, most every one of us that are watching this are basically religious people, I guess. But what if you had an app that, and there's a movie out now called Countdown. It's brand new. I haven't seen it. It's out on, I can watch it on, I can get it on Redbox and watch it, but I watched the preview to it yesterday, day before, something like that, because it looked intriguing, and it's like I probably won't watch it. It is a horror movie, and I'm not into horror movies. Y'all know I watch a lot of movies. I own a lot of movies. I like classics. I like, good movies that make you think. This one don't make you think. This makes you scream. Not into those so much. So I probably won't watch it. But I thought the format of the movie was interesting in that it gives you, and I guess it messes with the people and controls them, and no matter what, you try to get rid of your phone and get rid of the app and everything, and it doesn't get rid of, because it's a horror movie, so anyway, but I thought that it kind of got me thinking. I've never thought along the lines of what if I knew when I was going to die? Sometimes patients, people that get diseases, they somebody will tell them, the doctors tell them, oh, you only have so long to live, and or you're going to die in 3 months or a month or next week or whatever like that. Most of us, we don't have that put on us, so we don't think about that. So we don't think about that. And so this yesterday got me to thinking about that. We do every once in a while, we'll see something like a show that people are dying on, or we know somebody that has cancer and they've got so long to live, and it kind of passes through our minds. Man, that's rough. What would I do in that time? How would I think? Would my whole life change in what I think?
John chapter 16, verses 23 through 24. In that day you will not question me about anything. Truly, truly, I say to you, if you ask the Father for anything in my name, He will give it to you. Until now you have asked for nothing in my name. Ask, and you will receive, so that your joy may be made full. Yeshua did not say these words in an idle manner. We can and must ask in His name, and we will receive. Messianic Lamb Radio asks in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach for your support. Please donate as you are able.
What does it mean to you to live life Torah style?
It's an adventure. That's what it means to me. It's a daily adventure of discovery and growth. And, it's refreshing. It's
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hooge, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.